Shocking truths, 7 bone-chilling facts about medieval childbirth you never knew. In the shadowy corners of history, where whispers of pain and fear linger, lies the chilling tale of medieval childbirth. Picture this: in dimly lit stone chambers, women screamed in agony, their cries echoing like ghostly wails through the cold, damp halls. The air was heavy with the scent of blood and sweat, an unmistakable omen of life and death dancing dangerously close. Each birth was a gamble. The stakes? Life itself. A woman's fate hung by a thread, often severed by the very act that should bring joy. Consider this strange truth: medieval midwives were often seen as witches, wielding powers that both fascinated and horrified. They brewed potions, held secret rituals, and called upon dark spirits to aid in deliveries, all while the church looked on with suspicion. Imagine a terrified girl, cheeks flushed and trembling, clutching a charm as she prepared to deliver a child. Would the midwife fetch deliverance or doom? The tension simmered like a pot about to boil. Sometimes, when a birth turned grim, desperate husbands would turn to saws or blades, trying to save their beloved as the clock ticked mercilessly. Can you feel the tight chest of men forced to make unspeakable choices, hearts racing as they stood at the precipice of hopelessness? And what of the babies? Born into harsh realities, some found themselves wrapped in rags, only to be written off as dead before they ever breathed. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. And just when you think you've heard it all, another horrific fact emerges like a growl from the dark. A common practice was the trial of labor. If a woman's baby didn't arrive quickly enough, she faced dire judgments. Some were accused of witchcraft, while others found themselves subject to excruciating physical trials, bound in ropes, their bodies racked by fear as they awaited judgment. Can you imagine that? Where hope should spring eternal, fear took root, choking possibilities. As darkness enveloped the room and candles flickered desperately against the encroaching night, one heart-pounding question hung heavily in the air: how many lives began with screams that were swallowed by silence? What hidden horrors lie in the shadows of those medieval walls? And most haunting of all, how many tales remain untold, shadows flickering just beyond the edge of memory? The flicker of candles cast long shadows, creeping across the stone walls like whispers of despair. Deep in the heart of the medieval chamber, the moment of truth hovered like a spectre. Marjorie, a young woman with wide, terrified eyes, gripped the edge of the birthing stool, knuckles white with fear. Her labor pains were relentless, waves of agony crashing over her like dark tides pulling her under. Around her, the midwives, 3 women whose hands were calloused by years of deliveries, murmured to one another. One old crone with a weathered face squinted at the birth chart, eyes filled with both concern and excitement. "The child isn't positioned right," she announced, her voice cracked with age but edged with authority. "We must act quickly, lest the lady here joins the realm of the spirits." Marjorie felt her heart race. The air was thick with tension. A previous delivery had ended in the shadows of failure, the mother lost forever, the child left unloved. The tales of ghostly mothers wandering the earth, seeking what was stripped away from them, flashed through Marjorie's mind. Was she destined to share their fate? "Something isn't right?" The cry of a pleading husband in the corner surged through the dimness, snapping her back to the reality of her own impending doom. William, his brow drenched in sweat, paced like a caged animal, hands trembling as he glanced between his wife and the midwives. As the old crone prepared her instruments, Marjorie caught sight of a shard of silver glinting ominously in the dim candlelight. Panic surged through her. "No? No blades," she gasped, her voice breaking. The relics of medical practice felt like weapons, and she trembled at the thought of survival by sacrifice. The midwife's expression hardened as she pressed a damp cloth to Marjorie's forehead. "You must trust us. Surely, you prefer life over death." Her words were laced with an eerie calm that resulted in an unsettling silence. In the depths of that silence, Marjorie thought about the whispers of witchcraft. What if the midwives were more than they seemed? The air thickened with questions and unspoken fears. She remembered the stories of potions and spells, of dark rituals that promised life but could bring death. Had she unknowingly invited doom into her labor? Outside, the night was growing restless. The wind howled against the stone walls, a chilling chant that echoed the uncertainty swirling inside the chamber. Marjorie felt trapped, the walls closing in around her, the reality of her suffering pressing against her chest like a weight too heavy to bear. William's expression turned from desperation to anger as screams filled the room. "I must help her," he yelled, trying to break free of the midwife's grip. "You are not witches. You will let her die." In a moment of heightened tension, Marjorie's throat went dry. She glanced into the shadows, where she imagined the spirits of those long gone swirling, their eyes silent, waiting. What if they were here to guide her or to lead her to her doom? Just then, as she choked on her next breath, everything seemed to shift. A sudden, anguished cry pierced the air, drowning out all reason, a sound too haunting for this world. The candle flames flickered violently, as if caught in a storm, and a deep, dread-laden silence fell. And in that silence, a solitary figure appeared at the threshold of the door, backlit by the night's starkness. Could it be salvation, or was it the harbinger of doom? The question lingered unspoken, a dark premonition hanging over the room like a blade poised to drop. What would happen next? Would Marjorie overcome her fears, or would she become yet another ghost lingering in the shadows of a medieval nightmare? The figure at the door stepped forward, revealing a man cloaked in shadow, his identity obscured by the dim light. Marjorie's breath caught in her throat. The midwives froze, their murmurs dwindling into an anxious silence. William, still shuddering with alarm, fell back as if struck by an unseen force. "Let her be," the figure commanded, his voice resonant and firm. There was a raw power behind his tone that sent ripples of unease through the room. Marjorie squinted, trying to discern his features, but shadows clung to him, twisting into unnerving shapes. "Who are you?" the old crone demanded, stepping forward, hands gnarled like root-tangled branches. Her voice quavered, creating a fissure in her authority. "This is no place for you." The man took another step into the light, and Marjorie's eyes widened, recognition washing over her like ice water. It was Thomas, her brother. She hadn't seen him in years, not since he had fled their village under the weight of scandal and suspicion. His reputation had long been painted in shades of darkness, children daring to whisper his name like a curse. "Marjorie," he said, urgency in his voice as he approached. "I've come for you. You're in grave danger." The midwives exchanged looks, their faces etched with disbelief. "You have no power here, boy," one hissed, as if trying to push him back into the shadows. "She is ours to deliver." "No?" William interjected, his arms extending protectively toward his wife. "If you truly care for her, step the hell away." Marjorie felt a tumult of emotions whirl within her. Her labor pains throbbed like a living thing, but a torrent of confusion surged with them. What had Thomas become? What unspeakable truths did he come with? "I've seen things," he pleaded, his eyes glinting with desperation. "You don't understand. The midwives, they practice dark arts. They'll do anything to take your child." The weight of his words fell heavy in the silence. The crone's expression twisted, anger flashing across her lined features. "Lies? Yes, but a lost soul trying to ensnare you in his wicked web." In that moment, Marjorie felt a tightening in her chest, a flicker of hope amid the dread. But who could she trust? Her labor was a battleground, her body the trench where life and death fought mercilessly. Shadows crept along the edges of her vision, the specters of doubt whispering insidiously. "Marjorie, listen." Thomas pressed, his voice rising above the pregnant tension. "You can choose. You can fight for your child." But just as the words spilled forth like a desperate prayer, the room quaked with a rush of wind. The candles flickered wildly, and the shadows seemed to swirl and writhe, a chorus of anguished spirits echoing Thomas's claim. Fear clawed at her throat, and for a brief moment, she wanted to run. Then, another piercing shriek shattered the air. It wasn't Marjorie's voice, it wasn't that of the midwives, nor even her husband. It was a chilling, resonant cry that echoed from the darkness, a sound of pure terror that sank into the night, reverberating with a promise of calamity. Marjorie turned, eyes wide, and in that instant, something within her shifted. An ember of determination flickered to life in her heart. She was not merely a vessel of birth, she was a mother willing to do whatever it took to protect her child. As the groans of labor rebounded through the chamber, Marjorie met Thomas's gaze, her decision hanging in the air like a loaded crossbow. "We must act now," he insisted, stepping toward her. "You can escape this nightmare before it's too late." But what choice lay ahead? Would she trust her brother, the man who had become a specter of infamy, or would she cling to the familiar and the feared? The room spiraled into chaos, shadows looming closer, pressing against her sanity. The time for a choice was at hand, but would it lead to salvation or destruction? In the grip of turmoil, Marjorie felt the tremor of truth closing in. One fragile decision could alter the course of her fate and her child's life forever. The air thickened with tension, each breath more labored than the last. Marjorie's heart raced, a frantic drumbeat echoing in her ears, drowning out the chaos that filled the room. She glanced at the midwives, their eyes wide, but resolute, fists clenched, as if they were coiling for a strike. The flickering candlelight painted their faces in dramatic hues, revealing the open mouths of the shocked and the narrowed eyes filled with dread. "Stop!" she shouted suddenly, her voice breaking through the madness. The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. All eyes turned toward her, and in that heartbeat of silence, the shadows seemed to pause, waiting for all to unfold. "Marjorie, please." Thomas's voice was a whisper, but his urgency surged behind it. "This is not just about the birth. I've discovered things, terrible things." "The midwives," he faltered, glancing at them warily, "they enough." The old crone interjected, her voice a sharp crack that sliced through the gloom. "You think you can come back here and reclaim what's ours? Foolish boy." Marjorie, still caught in the tumult of emotions, felt a new fire ignite. "What do you mean, ours?" Her body tensed, pain coursing through her, yet the cascade of adrenaline pushed her forward. "What are you planning? What have you done?" The older midwife stepped closer, her presence like a storm cloud, dark and foreboding. "You have loyalty to blood, but your brother lies. You can't grasp how far he has fallen. Our ways are ancient, Marjorie. We protect life, and sometimes we must take it back." The room felt like it was shrinking. The walls whispered secrets, and the shadows danced sinister shadows, closing in like a noose. Marjorie's mind raced. "Take it back. You're not protecting anything. You're playing God." Thomas stepped further into the light, his features tightening with resolve. "They mean to take your child. To use it for their rituals." Marjorie's breath quickened. The laughter in the village, the whispers tucked into corners, the stories that had followed Thomas since he left, the fears of a dark magic that might be real, the threads of it all began to weave a terrible tapestry in her mind. She wouldn't believe that her brother, despite his past, could be right. Yet beneath that certainty, the primal instinct to protect her child rose like a tide. With every contraction, pain coursed through her, a rhythmic reminder that time was slipping away. Marjorie Thomas's eyes reflected both worry and a flame of hope. "You must trust me. I've encountered the very forces they wield. We can escape, I can help you, but we must go now." The crone stepped forward, urgency sharpening her features. "You are deluded, Marjorie. You think he's saving you, but he's here to lure you into chaos." Another scream cut through the air, again a guttural, twisting cry that sent a shiver down Marjorie's spine. This time it emanated from a figure writhing in the darkness beyond the crude wooden door, a shadow closer to a nightmare than a person. The room held its breath. Time hung suspended, and with it, an eerie stillness wrapped like a cloak around all souls present. "I will not let them take you. We can't let them. I swear, we'll find a way." Thomas's grip tightened around her wrist, firm yet desperate, but just as the decision lay upon her shoulders, the door began to creak open wider, a malicious wind billowing into the room, snuffing out the flickering candles and plunging everyone into darkness. Marjorie stood frozen, dread rippling through her as shadows shot like daggers across the walls. Where was the figure now? What awaited them in the silence? Marjorie. Thomas's voice sliced through the dark. We have to go now. Panic clawed at her throat as the shrieks rose again, mingling with the sound of something heavy dragging against the floor. All that she knew, all that she believed, wrapped around her like chains. A choice hung in the balance. Would she flee with the brother she had not trusted, or stay and abandon her last protection for the child she bore? Just as positions began to shift, heavy footsteps echoed from the threshold, and a grotesque silhouette loomed, waiting to burst through, a bringing forth of horror that could change everything. What truth lay beyond the night? What unseen order loomed in the shadows, ready to claim its prize? Marjorie's breath was shallow, panic clawing at her throat. The door creaked open further, and a suffocating darkness slithered into the room, wrapping around her like an icy grip. Her heart thundered a warning, yet she felt paralyzed, rooted to the spot as chaos beckoned. Marjorie. Thomas's voice sliced through the oppressive silence. He stepped closer, his breath warm against her cheek, grounding her in the torrent of dread. We have to go. Now. But instinct held her fast. A tremor ran through the shadows, and the ugly shape at the door shifted ominously. It was close, too close. All her senses screamed at her, run. But where? Trust me, sister, Thomas urged, eyes burning with urgency. We can escape this madness together. Madness? The crone cackled, breaking into the dim silence, her face a mask of twisted delight. You think you can run from our ways? From who you really are? Marjorie's spine stiffened. Who I am? I'm no part of your twisted games. The moment stretched, taut with tension, as the shadows coiled tighter. Then trust the darkness, dear Marjorie, the old woman hissed, a predatory gleam in her eye. Embrace your destiny. Suddenly, the figure from the threshold stepped into the flickering light, a grotesque vision that stole Marjorie's breath. She stumbled backward, the pain within her igniting with every frantic beat of her heart. The figure was a woman, not just any woman, but a mirror of herself, twisted and ghastly. There was no mistaking the familiar features, yet they were marred by fearsome rage and grief. Who are you? Marjorie stammered, her voice barely a whisper. The figure's laugh echoed hollow, a sound soaked in sadness. I am what you could have been. What your choices have denied. Marjorie felt a chill crawl up her spine, as the gravity of those words pressed upon her like an iron weight. Was this a glimpse of her own potential, lost to the shadows of doubt and heartache? Enough. Thomas shouted, breaking the spell that had woven itself around her. You're not her. You're a lie. The shadows lurched forward, and Marjorie gasped as the apparition reached out, bony fingers brushing her arm. The contact sent an electric shock through her, surging with mingled fear and recognition. Do not fight it. The apparition whispered, her voice dripping with urgency. You have the power to rewrite your fate. Marjorie swallowed hard, wrestling with a torrent of memories swirling in her mind. Her daughter, a fleeting image, danced before her, tiny fingers grasping, eyes wide with innocence. She was all that mattered. She would fight for that love. Let her go. Marjorie snapped, pulling away from the spectre's touch. I will choose my path. That's right, Marjorie, Thomas said, his presence solid next to her. You hold the key. Don't let them linger. They feed off your fear. As if on cue, the darkness stirred, screeching in protest. A wind howled through the room, a gust that felt alive, angry. The midwives moved closer, their intent more palpable than ever, their eyes wild as they squared around Marjorie like wolves circling prey. No? Marjorie shouted, forcing the words through the fear. This is about more than rituals or blood. I refuse to be a pawn in your games. The walls trembled, and the candlelight flickered in a sinister dance. The shadows writhed, pulling back slightly, as if testing her resolve. But Marjorie didn't falter. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the love for her child, and just as she felt herself shifting from doubt to determination, a loud crash echoed through the room, and the door burst open entirely, flinging splinters across the floor. The wind howled like a banshee, and Marjorie stumbled back as sunlight cut through the enveloping gloom, illuminating the ever-thickening shadows. "Marjorie!" Thomas shouted again, reaching for her. "This is our moment. We can break free." But the crone stepped forward, a wicked grin spreading across her lips. "You think you can escape? The price of your defiance is higher than you know." Marjorie felt cold fingers of terror claw at her heart. What price would her will to fight demand? As she looked at Thomas, light and darkness intermingled, the future of her child hanging precariously as she stood at the edge of choice. What happened next could change everything or seal their fates forever. Would she break free from the bonds that held her, or would she be drawn back into the darkness? The shadows recoiled almost as if they could sense Marjorie's rising defiance. Sunlight streamed through the splintered door, filling the room with a harsh, unyielding brightness. It felt like an awakening, a chance to breathe freely after choking on silence and fear. "Marjorie!" Thomas yelled again, his voice now more urgent. "Come to me." But the crone's laughter echoed against the walls, an eerie soundtrack that filled the crevices of Marjorie's mind. "Light can't save you," she crooned, a mix of malice and delight dancing in her eyes. "You're still just a shadow of who you could be." Marjorie felt Thomas's hand grasp hers, a lifeline in this tempest. Yet, despite her willingness to fight, the fierce reality of her enemy loomed large around them. She glanced at the apparition, the twisted version of herself glaring back with a knowing smirk. What if the crone was right? What if the darkness held truths she was too afraid to accept? "No!" she screamed, diving into the light. "I'm breaking free." As if responding to her declaration, the shadows let out a deafening wail. The walls shook violently, and the intensity of the light flickered, swirling like a cyclone, threatening to extinguish as Marjorie squeezed her eyes shut. "Hold on." Thomas's voice was clear, cutting through the chaos. "We're almost there." With sheer determination, Marjorie surged forward, pulling Thomas with her into the blinding light. It enveloped them, its warmth washing over the cold dread that had chained them to that cursed room. The darkness came crashing down, slashing at their heels. It consumed everything behind them, a monstrous wave of despair that tried to swallow them back into its depths. Marjorie's heart raced. Would it pull them apart? Suddenly, a deep growl erupted from the shadows. The crone's visage twisted with rage, her fingers extending toward them, clawing at the air as if to snatch them back. "You can't escape your bloodline," she screamed, voice vibrating with venomous fury. "Marjorie! Focus!" Thomas shouted, his grip tightening. "Don't let her win." Marjorie took a deep breath, allowing the light to fill her lungs. It rushed through her, igniting every cell with a wild sensation. In that moment, she saw visions of her daughter's laughter, a melody of innocence and love. Fighting against the haunting shadows, she let that love surge through her, amplifying her strength. With a roar that shattered the silence, she stepped forward into the light, pulling Thomas into the brightness with her. The shadows howled like banshees, shrieking with discord as they were torn apart, swallowed by the light. Marjorie could feel their cold fingers loosening their grip, fear flickering in their hollow eyes. "Now," Thomas urged, and they propelled themselves forward, leaving behind a darkness that clawed at the edges of the light but couldn't follow. As they emerged outside, squinting against the radiant sun, Marjorie felt a swell of triumph. They were free, at least for now. But something crashed to the ground behind them, a heavy object, splintering the calm like a thunderclap. Marjorie turned, heart skipping a beat. Behind her, the crone loomed large, visibly transformed. Gone was the old woman, in her place stood a figure wreathed in shadows, a hint of something darker lurking in the depths of her eyes. "Did you think this was over?" The crone spat, voice now full of fury and consequence. "I'll find you. You cannot escape what is written." The air thickened with tension as Marjorie felt the ground beneath her tremble. This fight wasn't finished, not by a long shot. "Run!" Thomas urged, his voice laced with desperation, as the crone took a menacing step forward. But as they turned, the world around them shifted again. Darkness wasn't far behind. Beating their hearts echoed in their ears, a relentless reminder of the lurking danger. What would they face now, out in the open? And how long could they keep the shadow at bay? The chase had only just begun. They dashed across the open field, the sun's warmth giving a false sense of safety, while dread rippled through Marjorie's core. Each step pounded with urgency, the distance between them and the crone narrowing as shadows writhed and twisted, hungry for their flesh. The ground pulsated beneath them like a heartbeat, wild and chaotic, as if even nature recoiled from the dark figure advancing behind. Over there. The trees! Thomas shouted, pointing to an old grove standing defiantly against the horizon. Its gnarled trunk sprawled like fingers clutching at the sky, offering a possible refuge. Heart racing, Marjorie nodded. They sprinted toward the shelter, navigating through knee-high grass that whispered secrets of its own. Memories of laughter and joy flitted through her mind, reminiscent of her daughter and the life once lived before the shadows invaded. But the crone's words rang louder in the background, invasive and unyielding. Keep running. The urgency in Thomas's voice pierced her thoughts. She cast a glance back. Terror surged as the crone melded with the shadows, her face a mercurial blend of twisted rage and cunning. It was not just her past they fled from, it was the terror of becoming nothing. As they reached the edge of the grove, Marjorie felt a shiver clawing up her spine. The trees stood solemnly, their branches twisting like skeletal hands against a feeble afternoon sky. Gasping for air, they ducked behind a massive oak, its bark rough against Marjorie's back. We can't stop, Thomas urged, scanning their surroundings. We can't let her catch us. Why? Marjorie breathed heavily. Why is she doing this? What does she want? Failure flooded her thoughts, threatening to pull her into despair. The crone had spoken of bloodlines, of destinies intertwined. What burdens did she carry without knowing? Before Thomas could answer, the shadows around them thickened, swirling ominously as they crept in closer. A barely visible whisper hung in the air, like hidden secrets begging to be unearthed. Suddenly, the branches above them creaked, and a dark figure leapt atop the tree, blocking their escape. Run, Marjorie! Now! Thomas yelled, his eyes wild with panic. But the figure was unstoppable, and a cold laugh echoed through the grove, sending ripples of fear coursing through her veins. It was the crone, now a spectre of darkness, merging with the very woods that shielded them. You thought you'd escape me? She rasped, her voice woven with shadows, hauntingly close. You'll learn. The truth is, waiting. The air grew thick, crushing, as Marjorie felt icy fingers brushing against her skin, twisting reality around them. Marjorie! Thomas called, snapping her out of reverie. We have to fight. It's the only way. But what could they fight against? The very essence of darkness? It felt insurmountable. Everything fought to pull her down, to shatter her resolve. In that moment, she realized something profound. Defiance may not just be a struggle against shadows, perhaps it was countering the truths that threatened to engulf her. With newfound resolve, Marjorie reached deep inside herself, grasping at fragments of light still flickering in her heart. I want to be a pawn, she declared, voice steadier than she felt. I will rewrite my path. A swirling vortex of shadows writhed at her feet, ominous and alive. The crone's laughter ceased, replaced by a tense silence, and within that silence, Marjorie felt clarity. Suddenly, in a moment of determination, she reached for Thomas's hand. Together, she whispered, daring for their spirits to unite. The shadows hesitated, as if sensing an incoming storm. The trees creaked, and Marjorie felt the pull of the light, not just from within, but all around, beckoning her to rise against the darkness. But just then, the ground erupted beneath their feet, splintering apart as a wounded section of earth swallowed the shadows trying to capture them. An old, buried truth was clawing its way to the surface, desperate to be found. What hidden skeletons lay in the dark? What terrible truths awaited them in this cacophony of chaos? The crone's malevolent energy swirled like a tempest, and with it came questions far deeper than any Marjorie could have anticipated. The chase within and without was far from over. Hold on! Thomas shouted as the earth quaked, shaking their senses. Marjorie knew in that moment their path would lead to revelations they weren't prepared for, and every heartbeat brought them closer to the clash ahead. As the ground convulsed beneath them, Marjorie's heart raced faster than the shadows closing in. The world fractured like glass, jagged edges slicing through her thoughts. She caught a flash of terror in Thomas's eyes. This was not just a battle of will anymore, it was a reckoning. With desperation, she tightened her grip on his hand. We must push forward. Trust the light. She felt a flicker of warmth pushing against the icy dread as she shouted into the maelstrom. The shadows coiled tighter around them, sentient and hungry, as if searching for any fear to feed on. In that moment, Marjorie thought of her daughter, the brightest light in her life, now dimmed by fear. No more. Fracture. Splinter. She yelled, remembering the crone's hold over her. Leave us. It's as if the shadows hesitated at her fierce words. They shivered, inching back. Marjorie glanced down to see the shadows retreat, sucked into the newly formed fissure in the earth below. Keep pushing. Thomas shouted, pulling her forward as they stumbled over broken ground. They stumbled deeper amongst the trees, the air thickening with dark memories woven into the grove. Suddenly, a low, mournful wail swirled through the branches, rattling their bones. Marjorie. It was a voice from the past, familiar and haunting. Her mother's voice echoed through the leaves, a voice she hadn't heard in years. You can't escape your roots. Your destiny is not yours to choose. Marjorie faltered. Was the crone twisting her mother's essence against her? The pain hit like a thunderbolt, propelling her forward, yet binding her to the shadows at the same time. She could lose herself here, with both dark and light always at war within her. Forget her. She is not here. Thomas's fierce whisper shattered her moment of weakness. Focus on us. Stay focused. Through sheer force of will, Marjorie clung to Thomas's presence, his comforting warmth keeping the encroaching darkness at bay. They raced into a denser part of the grove where the trees throbbed with ancient energy, each step thunderous as if the forest itself was alive. But the trees were not benign observers. As they ran, the branches shifted, their tips suddenly grasping, like relentless hands attempting to draw them back toward the crone's lair. She could sense it, an elder tree empowered by memories long buried, roots that craved recognition of their dark legacy. Marjorie, look. Thomas pointed. Between the trees, a glimmer of radiant light cut through the cacophony. A portal? Or a trick of the shadows? They had to decide. Hesitation would cost them dearly. Without thinking, Marjorie charged toward the light. Stay with me. She called to Thomas. As they sprinted, the crone's laughter echoed behind them, a sound that hurt and raked against their determination. You think you can escape? The truth lies in your family's past, Marjorie. Embrace it or perish. Marjorie stumbled but pushed forward. I will not. Their feet pounded against the soft earth, urgency flooding each heartbeat. The light pulsated closer, revealing a doorway of shimmering gold surrounded by swirling mist, a chance, a flicker of hope. Almost there. Thomas gasped, the hard determination in his voice driving her forward, past the growing darkness that sought to claim them, but just as they neared the entrance, roots erupted from the ground like serpents, wrapping around Thomas's ankles. No? Marjorie screamed, scrambling back to him. Go! He shouted despite the panic in his eyes. Don't let it pull you in. Just but before he could finish, a root snaked up Thomas's leg, pulling him down toward the ground with horrifying strength. The shadows thickened as Marjorie felt the searing pain of potential loss. Hold on, Thomas. She lunged, grasping at his arms, but the darkness was insatiable, thrumming with strength that imploded their courage. In that moment of do or die, Marjorie felt a tremor deep within herself, a connection to something primal. She could feel the echoes of her heritage, the love and losses of generations past. Your fate is in your hands. She heard the crone's voice hiss. Accept the darkness. No. I will forge my own path. Marjorie roared, the light flaring brighter in her heart. As the shadows closed in tighter, she remembered the crone's words. There's no way she'd let this fate consume Thomas, consume her. With a scream that flowed from her very essence, she unleashed a wave of energy, a radiant burst of defiance. As the darkness thrashed against her light, Marjorie was torn between pulling Thomas back and breaking free into the light. But the ground beneath them roared with chaos. Who or what would ultimately win? Leaving everything behind was not an option. But would she have the strength to reclaim what had been twisted? What spine-chilling truth awaited them just beyond the light? Could they break the chains of the past together, or would darkness snare them both? The wave of energy burst from Marjorie like a supernova, a radiant shield blocking the claws of shadow that clawed at her resolve. The world spun, dizzying in its chaos, as the golden light pulsated stronger with each heartbeat. But time was slipping away. "Marjorie! Grab my hand!" Thomas cried out, his voice fighting to overcome the escalating roar of the shadows. He was being pulled deeper, locked in a battle of strength that made her heart ache. "Hold on!" she shouted, determination mingling with urgency. But her feet felt heavy, rooted as if the earth itself decided to keep her here, to keep them both here. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled at the brightness of her power. It was a flicker of hope, raw and powerful. Marjorie felt her memories surge forward, her daughter's laughter, the warmth of her mother's embrace, the resolute strength of generations who fought against their fates. She had to channel that strength. With a roar that shook the branches overhead, Marjorie extended her arm toward Thomas. "Together we break this curse." A tremor ran through the air around them. The earth convulsed, as if responding to her words. Thomas's eyes were wide, filled with a blend of fear and faith. The roots that ensnared him writhed but seemed to hesitate, like snakes sensing a predator. "Trust me," she shouted, her voice echoing through the mayhem. Just a few more feet, if only he could reach her. In that instant, the shadows screeched, a cacophony of anguish and rage that sent chills racing down her spine. They knew they were losing control. With all her might, Marjorie drew upon the collective strength of her lineage, pouring it into the light, channeling it toward Thomas. The roots slithered and twisted, but she could see them thinning, their grip wavering. "You are stronger than this," she urged, her voice unwavering. "We are stronger." Thomas's face twisted in effort as he fought against the root, pulling it away, determination building in his eyes. With a sudden surge, he lunged toward Marjorie, hand outstretched like a lifeline. Their fingers connected, creating a surge of energy that radiated through them as if lightning struck the ground. The world shifted, the shadows shrank back, and for the first time, it felt as if the light had a fighting chant. Marjorie felt it, a connection, a deep current of magic that burst to the surface. Memories flashed, the laughter of the living, the whispers of ancestors long gone. They converged in a firestorm of brilliance that lit the grove ablaze with hope and defiance. The crone's laughter turned to a furious screech. "You will regret this. All will be revealed, one way or another." Marjorie's heart raced. What did she mean? What truth lurked beyond the trees? "Run!" Thomas shouted, breaking Marjorie from her torrent of thoughts. She barely registered the roots finally snapping, releasing him with a sickening pop. They stumbled forward, propelled by their frantic momentum. Just ahead of them, the golden portal shimmered, flaring with an otherworldly brilliance. It beckoned, promising solace and escape, but also uncertainty. Marjorie hesitated at its threshold. "Thomas, wait. What if it's a trick?" she gasped, mind racing. "It's our only chance. They won't stop." He pulled her closer, their breathing heavy, urgency palpable. But the shadows weren't finished. With a ferocity born of desperation, they lunged forward, distorting the space around them. The grove itself trembled, eager to swallow its prey. Marjorie and Thomas exchanged a glance, the weight of their choices hanging between them. Did they trust this light? Together, Thomas breathed, "Whatever happens, we face it as one." Marjorie nodded, a sense of clarity washing over her. They would take this leap, together. With fists clenched and hearts racing, they plunged into the golden light, and as they did, the shadows screamed a chilling sound that echoed through the realm, promising they wouldn't rest until they reclaimed their power. As darkness thrashed behind them, Marjorie felt the cold pull of truth creeping closer. But what awaited them on the other side? Would it reveal the answers they sought, or was this the crone's true sacrifice aimed to ensnare their very souls? As they plunged into the golden light, the world around Marjorie distorted. It was like tumbling through a dream, colors swirling and blending, yet the pulsing warmth somehow felt right, a promise of freedom, of life reclaimed. The shadows shrieked behind them, cacophony of desperation, but the light wrapped around them like a protective embrace, banishing the dark's chilling grasp. Suddenly, they were thrust into a clearing, sunlight pouring over their bodies. They fell to the soft grass, gasping for air. Marjorie blinked against the brightness, the sharp contrast overwhelming after the darkness they had escaped. For a moment, it felt like time stood still, but reality crashed back, jagged edges of fear and uncertainty cutting through her moment of peace. "Is this real?" Marjorie whispered, clutching Thomas's arm. His face was etched with relief but shadowed with concern. "We're safe for now," he assured her, looking around. "But we can't linger." There was an urgency to his words. He understood the remnants of darkness were likely still pursuing them. They stood, shaking off the remnants of their experience. The clearing was beautiful, dotted with vibrant flowers and sunlight filtering through the trees, yet despite its charm, Marjorie felt the weight of a terrible truth still pressing against her chest. What did she mean? She wondered aloud, her voice trembling. "What is written, what does that mean for us?" "Who knows?" Thomas replied, his brow furrowing. "But whatever it is, we have to face it together. Lean on me, I'll be by your side." Marjorie felt a swell of gratitude. After all that had transpired, this bond was a flickering light in her world. As they moved deeper into the grove, suddenly, the air grew still. The vibrancy around them dulled into muted tones, shadows creeping forward from the edges. Marjorie's heart raced. "We can't let it close in on us." She could feel the darkness inching closer, hungry to reclaim what it lost. Then, without warning, the shadows began to coalesce into tangible forms, shadows morphing into shapes that twisted and turned, arching toward them. An inky figure, eerily familiar, emerged from the gloom, a chilling reminder of the crone's power. "Did you think you could outrun your past?" The crone's voice echoed, trembling with malevolent glee. "You carry your bloodline's truth, and it shall not be denied. Stop. We will not be swayed by your lies." Marjorie shouted, feeling resolve rise within her. Fear and fury mingled together, igniting a fire in her chest. Thomas stepped closer, fiercely protective, grounding her with a fierce glance. Together, they faced their enemy, a united front against the encroaching darkness. "Look within yourself, Marjorie," he urged. "You have a legacy of strength, call upon it." "Your past shapes you, Marjorie," the crone hissed, advancing, her twisted smile growing wider. "You can't escape what is bound to you." Marjorie's heart raced, possibilities crashing through her mind. What did it mean? She grasped Thomas's hand tighter, trying to harness the memories of the strength, love, and unwavering spirit of the women who came before her. It was true, she would not let her past define her choices. "I am not a prisoner," she shouted, her voice ringing with power. "I will rewrite my own story." With every syllable, the shadows seemed to writhe, hesitating for the first time. The crone's smirk faltered, confusion washing over her features. "No?" she shrieked, the darkness swirling in uncertainty. "You dare defy me?" "Yes," Marjorie proclaimed, feeling a swell of energy unfurling from within. "I stand for my child, for everything I love. You will not take that from us." The ground shook again, as memories of laughter and joy surged around her daughter playing, innocent and free, wrapped in sunlit moments. Marjorie focused on those memories, allowing them to fuse with her voice, drawing strength from each cherished moment. "With every breath, I step into the light that I choose," she cried, and the shadows jittered, retreating as if her words burned through the darkness. Thomas echoed her, his strength lending its weight to her resolve. "Together, we are power. You win." The crone's figure trembled as if caught in a tempest. "You think you can wash away your blood? You're nothing without the darkness that binds you." With fierce determination, Marjorie filled the space with her light. She recalled the stories of those who endured their resilience and sacrifices. "Be gone from my life. I stand as my own." In that moment, the shadows quaked and twisted. Marjorie felt the connection with Thomas deepen, their hands glowing with a radiant force they had never tapped into before. Together, they became a beacon that shattered the darkness, light cascading outwards in dazzling waves. The crone wailed, the sound echoing in despair. No. This is not the end. And in a whirl of shadow and light, she fractured, dissolving into dust caught in the breeze. Marjorie and Thomas stood still, breathing heavily. Yet, a soothing whisper of relief enveloped them, like a cocoon of warmth, offering solace from the chaos. It's over, Thomas stated softly, yet the weight of uncertainty loomed. But we must remain vigilant. We don't know if the darkness will return. Marjorie nodded, her heart still racing but filled with a glimmer of hope. And if it does, we'll face it together. Side by side, no shadows can take me back. The clearing radiated vibrance, brimming with new life. As they stepped forward, the shadows dissipated completely, a reminder of the strength that dwelled within them. They had reclaimed their truth. They were free, leaving the grove hand in hand. They stepped into the new horizon where the sunlight danced across the open meadow ahead. The shadows of the past had been vanquished, at least for now. And together, they would carve their future, one filled with the promise of joy, family, and undaunted love. The ghosts of history would haunt no more, and as they walked into the light, Marjorie understood they had forged their path anew. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that delve into the mysteries of our world. Smash that like button for good luck and to feed the algorithm. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think of Marjorie's journey? What will she face next? Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. Don't wait even 1 second to share this video with 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's build a community and keep the stories rolling.